So, picture this. You're sitting at a pub trivia night, and the age-old question comes up. Is it actually illegal to call it the Union Jack unless it's flying on a ship? Or maybe you've just looked really closely at this world-famous symbol and thought, why don't those red diagonal lines quite line up? Or why does there seem to be a whole other flag just kind of hiding right there inside the design? Well, it turns out that one of the most recognizable symbols on the planet is actually an incredibly intricate 400-year-old puzzle.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to physically deconstruct this iconic symbol. We're going to pull apart the threads of the Union Jack to uncover 400 years of complex, overlapping, and honestly, pretty contentious history. We're talking rival ships, clever design compromises, and some literal visual math. Here is our roadmap for today. First, the three patron saints. Second, the first Union flag. Third, the 1801 Act of Union. Fourth, the Union Jack versus Union flag debate. And finally, whales and flag proportions.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the three patron saints. Because to understand the whole of this flag, we absolutely have to look at the parts first.
Before we begin tearing things apart, I want to introduce you to a truly fantastic word, vexillology. It's the formal study of flags and flag flying. So for the next few minutes, I want you to step into the mindset of a vexillologist with me. We aren't just looking at colors and shapes here. We are reading a historical map coded entirely in cloth. The absolute foundation of our visual math starts with the cross of St. George, the patron saint of England. This bold red cross on a crisp white background is one of the oldest Christian symbols out there. Its powerful association with England goes all the way back to the 12th century Crusaders. By the year 1277, King Edward I was marching under this exact banner, and it became the definitive flag of England. Next up, we add the second piece of the puzzle, the cross of St. Andrew, the patron saint of Scotland. The legend behind this one is super fascinating. The story goes that in the 8th century, right before a major battle, King Angus of the Picts saw a silver diagonal cross, which is called a saltire, shining brilliantly against a bright blue sky. After he won, it became the official banner of the emergent kingdom of the Scots. And then we have our third element, St. Patrick's Cross, representing Ireland. But this is where the history gets a little murky. Strictly speaking, only martyred saints are entitled to be represented by crosses, and St. Patrick actually died peacefully. So where did this red diagonal cross even come from? Well, actually, scratch that. It wasn't a martyr's cross at all. Dating back to the 15th century, it was the heraldic device of the ultra-powerful Fitzgerald family. It wasn't officially adopted as the emblem for the Order of St. Patrick until way later, in 1783. Now that we have our three distinct crosses, let's move to Section 2, the first Union flag. Let's see how these totally separate symbols were first forced to share a single canvas. To really get why they were combined, we have to look at this timeline. In 1603, Queen Elizabeth I of England died without an heir. That meant King James VI of Scotland inherited the English throne, becoming King James I of England. Suddenly, you've got two fiercely independent kingdoms sharing one monarch. The problem? English and Scottish ships immediately started arguing over which flags they were supposed to fly at sea. To stop the bickering, James ordered a unified maritime flag in 1606, which would eventually become the national flag when the two realms formally united in 1707. So King James commissioned some, frankly, brilliant visual math. The heralds had an incredibly tough job. How do you combine these two proud flags without insulting either nation? Their solution was genius. They interlaced them. The red cross of St. George was placed over the Scottish flag, which is a huge position of honor. But the upper corner nearest the flagpole, called the canton, was occupied by the white colors of St. Andrew, an equally honorable placement. It was a perfect design compromise, so neither side took full precedence. But, as you probably noticed, it's missing something. Let's head into the 19th century with Section 3, the 1801 Act of Union, to see how the final piece of our puzzle was added. See, for a long time, Ireland had remained a separate kingdom under the British Crown, but an Act of Union passed in 1800 meant that Ireland would officially join the fold. So, on January 1, 1801, the brand new United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland was born. This major political shift absolutely required a brand new flag design, and the College of Arms was put to the task. What the College of Arms did was take the existing 1606 flag, which already combined England and Scotland, and they layered the red diagonal cross of St. Patrick right on top of it. This complete visual equation created the modern composite banner we all recognize around the world today. When you compare the Queen Anne flag from 1707 on the left with the modern flag from 1801 on the right, the transition is striking. Notice the addition of the red diagonal lines. But look really closely at how those red lines are placed.
They don't sit perfectly in the center of the white diagonal stripes. They specifically avoid completely covering up the Scottish White Cross.
This brings us to a crucial heraldic technique called being counterchanged. The red cross of St. Patrick is deliberately offset. It's kept narrower and is tucked securely underneath the thicker white saltire of St. Andrew in the upper corner. This is a subtle but absolutely essential design compromise. It ensures that St. Andrew's older original cross retains its historical status, rather than just being turned into a white border for the Irish cross.
Now that we know how this thing was physically built, let's pivot to Section 4, Union Jack or Union Flag. We're going to definitively answer the question that kicked off this whole explainer. Okay, we've all heard that pedantic correction at a party, right? Actually, it's only the Union Jack if it's on a ship, otherwise it's the Union Flag. Well, vexillologists know the truth. We are going to debunk this famous myth once and for all.
Now, it is true that in the 17th century, naval vessels flew this flag from a specially rigged pole on the bow of the ship called a jackstaff. Because of this, people just assumed the flag was named after the pole. But historically, it's actually the other way around. The word jack simply meant a small flag. It predates the invention of the jackstaff pole by over 150 years. From the 1600s onward, the Admiralty used both Union flag and Union Jack completely interchangeably, whether it was on land or at sea.
The bottom line is, historically speaking, both names are completely accurate. In 1902, an Admiralty circular officially pronounced either name as valid. And following that, in 1908, the UK Parliament conclusively stated, the Union Jack should be regarded as the national flag. So, you can confidently use either name without any fear of being corrected. They are both entirely legit.
Let's clear up one last glaring omission in our final section, Wales and flag proportions. Think about it for a second. We have England, Scotland, and Ireland represented, but if this banner represents the entire United Kingdom, where is Wales? Wales has zero direct visual representation in this 400-year-old puzzle. There's no green and white field and certainly no awesome red dragon. So why were they left out? The answer all comes down to timing. You see, Wales was actually annexed by King Henry VIII way back in the 1500s. The Tudor monarchs essentially adopted the St. George Cross for their newly unified territory. So by the time King James commissioned the first Union flag in 1606, Wales had already been legally and symbolically united with England for half a century. From the perspective of the crown at the time, the English cross was already doing double duty, representing both England and Wales. And finally, let's talk about the actual shape of the flag, because it turns out there are two official shapes. Over the centuries, the Royal Navy began stretching the flag out to a 1:2 proportion simply because a longer, narrower flag just looked better when it was flying high up on the rigging of a ship. But on land, the British Army has always used a 3:5 proportion. What's amazing here is that a 3:5 ratio beautifully aligns with the mathematical perfection of the golden ratio. It's a visually pleasing proportion you find everywhere in nature and classical architecture. So, we've seen how this flag acts as both a map and a history of a union forged through some seriously brilliant design compromises over the centuries. But it leaves us with a pretty profound thought to end on. With shifting political landscapes today, like the ongoing discussions around Scottish independence, does the Union Jack represent a finished 400-year-old puzzle? Or is this iconic composite banner simply waiting for its next grand historical redesign? It's definitely something to chew on the next time you see it flying. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope you walk away seeing this everyday symbol in a whole new light.